Welcome to Lakshmi Academy. Today we will go over 100 plus software testing interview questions which can be asked during the interview. And I have a detailed video on each topic which will help you to understand the concept on all these questions which I have asked here. So first question, what is software testing? The process of validating and verifying that software program or application or product work as expected and software meet the business and technical requirements. What are the different types of software testing? There are multiple different types of software testing. I'm going to mention a few important ones. Unit testing, integration testing, regression testing, smoke testing, functional testing, white box testing, black box testing, load testing, stress testing, performance testing, alpha testing, beta testing, system testing, incremental integration testing, sanity testing. What is software quality? The definition given by ISTQB, software quality is the totality of functionality and features of a software product that bear on its ability to satisfy stated or implied needs. What is unit testing? Testing of individual software components or units or modules is unit testing. The purpose of unit testing is to validate that each unit of the software performs as designed and as per software requirements. What is integration testing? Integration testing is to combine the unit tested module and test them as a combined unit. Integration testing tests integration or interfaces between components, interaction to different parts of the system, such as an operating system, file system, and hardware. When should be integration testing implemented? At the end of the cycle or simultaneously with the development? It depends on your company policies and how you have designed everything. So let's move on to the next question. What are the types of integration testing technique? Big bang approach, incremental approach, top-down approach, bottom-up approach, sandwich approach. What is Big Bang approach? In Big Bang integration testing, all modules are integrated simultaneously, after which everything is tested as a whole. What is top-down approach? Top-down approach, as the name suggests, testing takes place from top to bottom, following the control flow or architectural structure. Components or systems are substituted by stubs. What is bottom-up approach? And as the name suggests again, bottom-up approach testing takes place from bottom to top. It is in reverse order of the control flow or architecture. And components or systems are substituted by drivers. What is sandwich approach? Combination of top-down and bottom-up approach is sandwich approach. Why integration testing is needed? There are different reasons. The first reason, different modules are designed by different software developers. They may be at different locations, whose understanding and programming logic may differ from each other. So integration testing becomes necessary to verify the software modules work when combined together, because each module is written by different developer. And second reason is, at the time of module development, there may be changes in the requirement by the customers, and the new requirements may not be unit tested. Hence, integration testing becomes necessary. Third reason, interfaces of the software modules with the database could cause errors, as there may be changes in the data structure. External hardware interfaces can introduce errors, and exception handling can be better tested with integrated system. What is regression testing? It is a type of software testing that verifies that software performs correctly after the change or defect fix. Changes may include software enhancements, patches, hardware changes, networking, data structures, configuration changes. In other words, purpose of regression testing is to identify that new defects are not introduced into the system after the change. At what levels regression testing should be done? At all levels mainly. Unit testing, integration testing, system testing. And the reason is focus on testing is different at different levels. What are the types of regression testing technique? Corrective regression testing, progressive regression testing, retest all strategy, selective strategy. What should be the frequency of regression testing? Ideally, regression testing should be done after bug fix or after any changes to the system, but sometimes it can be time consuming and expensive. But before delivering the product to the customer, regression testing is mandatory. What is the criteria to select test cases for regression testing? Bug fixes and changes, the area of frequent defects, the area which has undergone multiple recent code changes, the area which is highly visible to the users, then the core features of the product which are mandatory requirements of the customer, and finally, very important is an impact analysis is essential to find out what areas may get impacted due to bug fixes or enhancements. And based on impact analysis, additional test cases should be selected to test the impacted areas and to include in your regression testing. Which part of the regression should be automated? Tests which are stable, repeated frequently, and testing major functionalities of the system are good candidates for automation. What are some of the factors to consider during regression testing? Test functionalities surrounding bug fixes and new enhancements. If two or more tests are similar, you can merge them or get rid of less effective one. Focus on functional and important non-functional issues. Make changes to data and find any resulting corruption. Trace the effects of the changes on program memory. What is ad hoc testing? Ad hoc testing is an informal testing approach with an aim to break the system. The testing is usually performed without any documentation or plan and does not follow any test design techniques. Mainly ad hoc testing includes negative testing, different orders of performing transactions. Example I can give you, like suppose there is a transaction which needs to be completed, you just cancel the transaction in between, enter invalid input. So you just do more of a negative testing in ad hoc testing. What is alpha testing? Alpha testing is simulated or actual operational testing by potential user customers or an independent test team at the developer side. Alpha testing is a form of internal acceptance testing before the software goes for beta testing. What is beta testing? Beta testing is followed by alpha testing. Beta testing takes place in the real world in the user's native environment with real customers which are end users, and it validates the usability, functionality, compatibility and reliability of the product. The goal of beta testing is to improve the quality of the product, integrate customer input on the complete product, and ensure release readiness. What is functional testing? Functional testing is a type of software testing whereby the system is tested against the requirement specifications or functional specification. What is positive testing? In this testing, tester always checks for only valid set of input values and verifies if software under test or application behaves as expected with its expected output values. The main goal of positive testing is to check whether software application is not showing any error when it is not supposed to and showing an error or warning when it is supposed to. Let's move on to the next question. What is black box testing? It is a software testing technique in which functionality of the software under test is tested without reference to the internal structure of the component or system. Which are black box testing technique? Decision table testing, all pairs testing, equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, cause-effect graph, error guessing. What is white box testing? White box testing is a testing technique that examines the program structure of the system. What are the white box testing techniques? Statement coverage, branch coverage, path coverage. What is mutation testing? In mutation testing, certain statements in the source code are mutated, that is changed, and checked if the test cases are able to find the errors. The changes in the mutant program are kept extremely small, so it does not affect the overall objective of the program. Mutation testing evaluates the quality of the software test. What is usability testing? Usability testing, basically the testers test the ease with which the user interfaces can be used by the user. It tests whether the application or the product built is user-friendly, and it relates to testing the flow, the navigation, the layout, the speed, the content. These are some of the things you consider when you do usability testing. What is recovery testing? Recovery testing is a type of non-functional testing technique performed in order to determine how quickly the system can recover after it has gone through any kind of failure, like the failure can be system crash or hardware failure. Recovery testing is a forced failure of the software in different ways to verify if the recovery is successful. What is acceptance testing? System is tested for acceptability. It is performed to validate that the software meets a set of agreed acceptance criteria. What is accessibility testing? It is a type of system testing to verify that a product can be used by the people having disabilities. What is smoke testing? Smoke testing is a type of software testing which ensures that the major functionalities of the application are working and the software is in a good state to perform further detailed testing. The outcome of smoke testing decides if a build is stable enough to proceed with further testing. Smoke testing is shallow and wide testing performed with very limited test cases to ensure that the important features are working fine and are good to proceed with the detailed testing. Usually, smoke testing is performed with positive scenarios and with valid data. What is agile testing? Testing practice for project using agile methodologies and emphasizing test-first design. What are the advantages of agile testing? Agile testing saves time and money. There is less documentation, regular feedback from end user. Daily meetings can help to determine the issues well in advance. And when there are daily meetings, there is a better communication between the QA and the developer team. What is Application Programming Interface, also known as API? A formalized set of software calls and routines that can be referenced by an application program in order to access supporting system or network services. What is manual testing? It is a process carried by a testing team to find the defects and to confirm the application works as per the requirements. Testers manually execute test cases without using any automation tools. Testers play an important role as end user and verify all features of the application work as per requirements. What are the disadvantages of manual testing? Manual testing is slower than automation. Running tests manually can be very time consuming and requires more resources, and manual testing is prone to human errors. What is automated testing? Automated testing is performed by using tools which are capable of executing tests, reporting outcomes, and comparing results with earlier test runs. Tests carried out with automated tools can be run repeatedly at any time of the day without need of human being to be present. Automation is expensive initially, but eventually it is cost effective. What can be the limitations of automating software testing? It is not possible to do 100% automation of any application. Some part needs to be manually tested. Automation testing can't replace manual testing, as manual testing is done by human, and of course human intelligence cannot be replaced by machine at all levels, and we should be proud about it. Wherever there is a change in the user interface, most of the automated script needs changes in their code, and thus continuous update and maintenance is needed. Not all the tools support all kinds of testing. A few tools are specialized for user interface testing, few are for database testing, and few for web testing, and then there are others which are specialized for performance load testing. So it can be expensive to buy all those tools. It depends on the company budget and how big is the project. Let's move on to some database questions. What is a database? Database is an organized collection of data which provides efficient retrieval of the data. Let's move on to the next one. What is DBMS? DBMS is Database Management System. It is a system of systematic way of creating, storing, retrieving, and managing of data. The example of DBMS are file system, XML. What is RDBMS? Relational Database Management System. It's a database system based on relational model. Example, SQL Server, Oracle. What is database testing? Database testing is a process of testing the behavior of the database with reference to front end. It can be web or desktop application, and any changes made in the front end should reflect the back end, and any changes made in the back end should reflect the front end. Database testing also involves data integrity, data validity, database performance, testing of functions, procedures, and triggers. What do we need to check in database testing? Constraint check, verification of field size and type, stored procedures, triggers, performance-based issues. How do you test data integrity? And what do you take into consideration while verifying data integrity? Verify any of the CRUD, that is CRUD, C for create, R for retrieve, U for update, and D for delete. These are the four important operations. They should, when you conduct these operations, they should display the most recent value and status of the shared data on all the forms and screens. That is data consistency throughout the application. Verify blank values can be retrieved from the database. Verify each value is successfully saved to the database, and truncation of strings and rounding of numerals occurs as per business requirement. and if there are no business requirement for truncation and rounding, then it should not occur. We need to test it. Verification of data compatibility against older version of hardware or operating system. Verify the data updated, modified, and deleted from the front end are reflected in the back end. How do you test data validity? Field level validation, form level validation, data saving validation, search criteria validation. How can you reduce data corruption which occurs by human errors? This is more for a developer question, but they can ask you if you're experienced software tester applying for a job with like 3 to 4 years experience. So the things which can minimize the data corruption caused by human errors can be range validation, lookup validation, like masking the input validation. How will you plan database performance testing? Set and define performance goals regarding load and response time. Define resources and build virtual machines to identify database behavior with different machine configurations. Create multiple virtual users to verify the response time for executing the transaction. Time taken by database to fetch specific records or number of records should be verified. Include editable transactions and non-editable transactions. In other words, editable are read and write and non-editable are read-only transactions. Design test cases to identify the system breakpoint. What will you consider while testing procedures? Relate to the business requirements, the procedures written, or whatever you're going to test. Number of rows affected in the output, extracted records, what it is supposed to do and not supposed to do. Queries to test if a stored procedure is extracting the correct data. Parameter testing, check parameters if they are required. Call stored procedure with valid, invalid data and boundary data. Test return values when failure or success occurs. Validate the return values. Then testing the error messages, make stored procedure fail and check for error messages. Find out exceptions where stored procedures can fail. Name and explain database testing validation. We do data mapping and asset properties validation and business rule adherence while doing database testing validation. Under data mapping, data often travels back and forth from the backend database to the user interface and vice versa. To validate whether the fields in the user interface are mapped consistently with the corresponding database tables and also fields within the table. Whenever a certain action is performed in the front end, like the 4 important actions which I have mentioned, create, retrieve, update, and delete action, that should invoke also at the back end. So front end and back end, you should see both the actions, all the 4 actions at the both ends. Asset properties validation, atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability. Atomicity means that a transaction either fails or passes. There is nothing in between. If a transaction has multiple steps and any part of transaction fails, means that the entire transaction has failed. Consistency. A transaction either creates a new valid state of data or rolls back to the original state if any failure occurs. Isolation. A transaction in process and not committed should remain isolated from other transactions. Durability. Once a transaction is completed and committed, no external factors like power loss, technical failures like hardware crash, rebooting, networking issues should be able to change it. And under database testing validation, you make sure that it's validating according to the business rule adherence. What SQL statements have you used for database testing? Now, if your job is related to only data, like more towards database testing, then you need to know the SQL statements in details. And I'm going to do a separate video tutorial on database testing into like testing interview questions with SQL. But if you're just applying for a software testing interview, part of it is database testing, then they may ask you this question: what SQL statements have you used for database testing? DML, data manipulative language, which includes update, insert, delete, select, merge, call. DDL, data definition language, create, alter, drop, truncate, comment, rename. DCL, grant and revoke. TCL, rollback and commit. How do you test database manually? The 4 operations again: CRUD, create, retrieve, update and delete in the front-end application you perform, and verify that data is changed accordingly in the back-end. And that's how you do the database testing manually. How do you test triggers? By querying the common audit log where we can see trigger fired. What is data-driven testing? Data-driven testing is an automation testing which tests the output and or input values. These values are read directly from the data files rather than using hard-coded values. The data files can be Excel files, CSV files, text files, data pools, because they can ask you questions like what kind of files you have used for data-driven testing, and you should know which are the files available and which can be used. Explain defect leakage. Defects which are found in production and missed during system test is called defect leakage. What do you mean by defect age? Defect age in terms of time is the difference in time between the date defect is detected and the current date if the defect is still open, or the date the defect was fixed if the defect is already fixed. What is showstopper bug? A showstopper bug, as the name suggests, showstopper. It's a bug that hinders or stops from continuing or running your test script further. So you cannot do your testing further because of that bug. It's called a showstopper bug. You cannot proceed to the next level as there is no workaround this bug, and it's also called as a blocker. What is bug leakage? A bug leakage results when the bug is detected which should have been detected in the earlier build versions of the application. Let's move on to the next question. What is bug release? Release of the software with the known bugs is called a bug release, but the known bugs, the priority and severity of this bug is very low. What is latent defect? The defect is an existing defect in the system that has not yet caused a failure as the exact set of conditions has never been met. Now, why do software have bugs? Software development cycle involves humans at all levels, which makes software prone to human errors, and also it is prone to technical errors. Now, errors can happen at many levels. Business analysts can make errors while gathering and documenting requirements. Developers can have programming errors. Different parts of the software may not communicate with each other. The complexity of the software, the time limit, so there can be errors when the developers are working under pressure and the testers do not have more time to test, and multi-tier implementation. What can happen if software is not tested? It can have monetary loss, time, bad reputation to the company. You can have lawsuits, injuries and death if you're doing any software example related to medical field, and if there are any errors, it can lead to injury and death. What is the difference between a defect and a failure? When the defect reaches the end customer, it is called a failure, and if the defect is detected internally and resolved, it is a defect. What is SDLC? Software Development Life Cycle. Is a process used by software industry to design, develop and test high quality software that meets or exceeds customer expectations. Let's move on to the next one. What are the different models of SDLC? A waterfall model, agile model, a prototyping model, iterative model, V model, spiral model, incremental model. What are the different types of software requirements? Business requirements, which are very high level. Market requirements, these are high level drilling down to business requirement. Functional requirements, non-functional requirements, user interface requirements. In some of the companies, market requirements and user interface requirements are not included in the traditional software requirements. So, but again, it depends on your company policies and what is their priority. What is STLC? Software Test Lifecycle. It is a testing process which is executed in a systematic and planned manner where different activities are carried out to improve the quality of the product. What are the phases of STLC? Requirement analysis, test planning, test development, test execution, defect tracking, test closure. Explain test-driven development. It's also referred as TDD because sometimes they can ask you just question what is TDD, or they'll ask you what is test-driven development. It's a software development process that relies on the repetition of very short development cycle. Requirements are turned into very specific test cases and the software is improved to pass the new test. Unit testing is repeatedly done on source code in trust-driven development. What is a build? It is a number given to installable software that is handed over to testing team by the development team for testing purpose. What is a release? Release is a number given to software that is handed over to customer by the testing team or development team. What is a test case? A test case is a set of conditions or variables under which testers will determine whether a system under test or one of its components satisfies requirement or works correctly. It's a document which has a set of test data, preconditions, post-conditions, and expected results. What is a test script? A test script is a software testing, is a set of instructions that will be performed on the system under test to test that a system functions as expected. You can execute test scripts by manual testing and automation testing also. What is a use case? A use case is a list of actions or event steps, typically defining the interaction between a role and a system to achieve a goal. It can use a human or the actors can be human or the external system. What is test plan? A test plan is a document that describes the objective, scope, approach, target market, and focus on software testing efforts. What is requirement traceability matrix? Document that shows many-to-many relationship between test cases and requirement is called requirement traceability matrix. It's also called traceability matrix in some of the companies. What is, let's move on to the next screen before I read the question. What is verification? The process of evaluating the work product of a development phase to determine whether they meet the specified requirements for that phase, to ensure that the product is been built according to the requirements and design specification. What is validation? The process of evaluating software during or at the end of development process to determine whether it satisfies specified business requirement. to ensure that the product actually meets the user's needs and that the specifications are correct in the first place. In other words, validation is to demonstrate that the product fulfills its intended use when placed in intended environment. What is the difference between verification and validation? Verification is a review without actually executing the process, while validation is checking the product with actual execution. For instance, code review and syntax check is verification, while actually running the product and checking the result is validation. And you can do a simple way to remember is verification is, are we building the product right? And validation is, are we building the right product? Name the test techniques: equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, state transition testing. What is the purpose of test technique? Test techniques are primarily What is the purpose of test technique? Test techniques are primarily used for two purposes: to help identify defects and to reduce the number of test cases. What is equivalence partitioning? Equivalence partitioning is a software testing technique that divides the input data of a software unit into partitions of equivalent data from which test cases can be derived. Normally, test cases are designed to cover each partition at least once. The equivalence partitions are usually derived from the requirement specification for input attributes that influence the processing of the test object. The technique tries to define test cases that uncover classes of errors, thereby reducing the total number of test cases that must be developed. An advantage of this approach, equivalence partitioning, is reduction in time required for testing a software due to lesser number of test cases. Let's move on to the next question. What is boundary value analysis? Boundary value analysis is used to evaluate the behavior of the system at the boundaries of the allowed data rather than finding those exist in the center of input domain. What is state transition testing? State transition testing, in which outputs are triggered by changes to the input condition or changes to the state of the system. In simple words, you can put it as tests are designed to validate allowed and disallowed states and transitions from one state to another by various input data. What is entry criteria? Entry criteria is the minimum eligibility or the minimum set of conditions that should be met in order to start the testing process. What is exit criteria? Exit criteria is the minimum eligibility or the set of conditions that should be met in order to close a particular project phase. Now, entry and exit criteria are documented and signed off during the test planning phase and are included in the relevant test plans. What is coverage in software testing? Coverage is a measurement used in software testing to describe the degree to which the source code is tested. What are the different types of coverage techniques? There are three basic types of coverage techniques. Statement coverage. The coverage ensures that each line of source code has been executed and tested. Decision coverage. In decision coverage ensures that every decision, example, true and false in the source code has been executed and tested. Path coverage. In this coverage, it is ensured that every possible route through a given part of code is executed and tested. What is CMMI? Now, I'm going to go over some of the definitions, and if it's a personal interview or phone interview, there are less chances that you will be asked the definitions, but they can ask you. There are 5% chances that they can ask you some of the definitions. But in some companies, they do take written interviews or written test. So during the written test, there are more chances that they would ask you the definitions. So what is CMMI? The Capability Maturity Model Integration. CMMI again is a Capability Maturity Model Integration. Is a capability improvement model that can be adapted to solve any performance issues at any level of the organization in any industry. What is ISO in software testing? Software testing is an internationally agreed set of standards for software testing that can be used within any software development lifecycle or organization. By implementing these standards, you will be adopting the only international recognized and agreed standard for software testing, which will provide your organization with a high-quality approach to testing that can be communicated throughout the world. What is Six Sigma? Six Sigma is a set of techniques and tools for process improvement. Six Sigma seeks to improve the quality of the output of a process by identifying and removing the causes of defects. It uses a set of quality management methods and creates a special infrastructure of people within the organization who are expert in these methods. Each Six Sigma project carried out within an organization follows a defined sequence of steps and has a specific value targets. For example, reduce process cycle time, reduce cost, increase customer satisfaction, and increase profit. What are the types of reviews? Walkthrough, technical review, and inspection. What is test bed? The test execution environment configured for testing. Testbed consists of specific hardware, software, operating system, network configurations, the product under test, other system software, and application software. Explain QMS, Quality Management System. It is a set of policies, processes, and procedures required for planning and execution in the production and development and service in the core business area of an organization and the areas that can impact the organization's ability to meet customer requirements. Let's move on to the next screen. What is software versioning? Software versioning is a process of assigning either unique version names or unique version numbers to unique states of computer software. Within a given version number category is major and minor. The numbers are generally assigned in increasing order. For example, if you have version 4.2, the new version will be 4.3. So that way you can identify which is the older version and which is the newer version. What are typical testing you will give importance while testing web application? When you're testing web application, you will consider link testing, security and authentication, performance testing, that is response time, scalability, load testing, stress testing, usability, functionality, user interface, session issues, operating system compatibility, browser compatibility, forward, it is you can test also forward and backward compatibility, navigation issues. What is cross-browser testing? As the name itself tells you, cross-browser means you're doing testing with browsers. Test your website or application in multiple browsers, making sure that it works consistently and as intended without any dependencies or compromise in the quality. The application can be web application or mobile application. What is internationalization? Internationalization is the process of designing a software application so that it can be adapted to various languages and regions without any changes. It's a process of, in the simple words, you can put it, is a process of designing and developing a product or a content such that it enables localization for any given culture, region, or language. What would you consider when testing internationalization of a product? Content localization, feature-based local culture awareness, user interface, file transfers, rendering. What is localization testing? Localization is the process of adapting internationalized product, application, or software for a specific range or language by adding local specific components. Which important areas of the software are customized when localizing an application? Date and time formats, because international, every country, like if you're doing for United Kingdom, it's a different date format. If you're doing for United States, the software will have different time format. If you're doing for Asian countries, it's a different date format. And then the currency use, keyboard usage, sorting, aligning of data, color schemes, symbols, icons, because some symbols may represent something else in different region, whereas some symbols may have a completely different meaning. Text and graphics, which is in a given culture, because some of the text and graphics may be viewed as very sensitive or it can be misinterpreted, and diverse legal requirements. Now, when you're answering your software testers interview, they will ask you personal questions, like tell us something about yourself. So when you're answering this question, tell us something about yourself, you should take this opportunity to tell positive things about you. Tell something about personality, that you work in a team and you like to work with others, and then move to technical skills, that how quickly you can learn new technical, grasp any new technical knowledge. So take this opportunity when answering this question to tell positive things about yourself. What did you learn from your previous companies? Now, one thing I have noticed, that there are some candidates who try to complain about the previous companies. Never complain about your previous managers, even if you didn't like them, even if you didn't like the companies. Never complain about your previous managers or previous job when you're answering an interview, because that leaves a bad impression that you don't get well with people and you have personality issues. So always talk positive about your previous companies. What did you learn? You can give the technical aspects that you have. This is if suppose the previous company was using one of the company was using SQL Server database and Oracle, then you can say, in ABC company, I have learned about Oracle database, and in my last company, I have worked about SQL Server. So I learned database testing with reference to SQL Server, or different softwares which may be you have used, or different automation tool. Then you must have learned about working in the team. If you have worked in the agile environment, then you can just talk about it. What did you learn in your previous companies? What are your strengths? They can be your personal strength and the technical strength, like you're good in database testing or you're good in web application testing. Your personal strengths example can be you are a quick learner, you can train others, or you work in the team very well. So you can note down your strength before going for an interview. Just write down on a piece of paper what are your strengths, and then it will be easier for you to answer that question. And you can give some examples. Don't make the answer very lengthy, but you can say the strengths and then support it with the example, what you have done, like you have helped your co-workers, like you have done your job and then even helped your co-workers, something like that. Why did you choose software testing as your career choice? You can say it's a passion, reason for passion. And one more thing, when you're answering software testing interview question, like general interview, that software testing is a backbone of the software industry. So try to make it a point that how important software testing is, and that is how it makes you feel that you're doing something important in your career. Then why you would like to work for our company. Before you go for an interview, make sure you do a research about the company, and then you can just frame your answer accordingly. If you're going for an interview in a small company, then you can say, as the company is growing, I would like to grow. Or if you are going for a company in healthcare industry, then you can say that you can say a couple of positive points, and one of the point is you can say healthcare industry is helping people to be healthy, so I want to touch the people by helping them by doing the software testing. In some way you're going to help people. Then you can do research about the company, how the company has grown, and just talk positive about the company where you would like to work for. So these are some of the questions. I've given examples, but you need to write your own points, your own strengths, and then prepare for the interview. So I hope you find this video tutorial helpful. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe Lakshmi Academy on YouTube for more videos.